and welcome to another Gen Z episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Julie Fernandez, and I'm joined today by another special Gen Z guest, Elias. Welcome to the podcast, Eli.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Also, my mother, as another little side note.
Just in case you slip up and don't call me Julie and call me Mom throughout.
Yeah.
That will explain
Thank
some
you,
things.
Julie. Oh, it feels weird. We'll run with it.
Yeah, right. We're just going to go with it. All right. So Eli, let's start out with, when did you graduate college? And at that time, what did you think you wanted to do?
Yeah. So I graduated in the spring of 23, and I pursued a major in finance. I got my bachelor's in finance, and that's pretty much where I wanted to go. I knew early on in college that I wanted to definitely go the business route. It was really interesting to me. You know, you lived the whole business life too. So it was always just really neat hearing you talk about the things you were talking about, you know, over the phone with clients and with your coworkers and stuff. So just early spark right away. And I went to Western Michigan. They had a great business program there. I was very satisfied with my education there. The one thing I knew I did not want to do was to be a financial advisor. I knew that was not my calling. It really, and maybe for selfish reasons, I don't know. I think working with people, especially people that may be in tough like financial positions and stuff, like in my head, that would just like irk me a lot. I'd be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? So I knew that I just would not be a good fit for interacting with clients and stuff like that. So I decided probably around my junior year of college that I wanted to pursue corporate finance and work in more of a business setting where essentially being a financial planner or advisor for a company instead of being one for an individual person. So that was kind of where I wanted to head. And right out of college, that's where I headed.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, right? Because folks that are in that period of their life where you're finishing up a college and trying to find your first job, how did you job shop? So what did you do and what did you not do when you were trying to land that first job?
So what I did not do is spam resumes and stuff on LinkedIn and Indeed, because, big misconception with my generation is that that's how you get a job. That is how you don't get a job. That's actually how you end up in pyramid schemes and all these other, kind of somewhat sketchy jobs, or, jobs that maybe aren't putting up all the details right up front. It's a great way for networking, using those platforms and stuff. But I found that unless you're looking for like an hourly job with, no particular requirements, that going that route, like my peers were doing in college, was just not the right move.
Yeah. So what did you do instead?
Yeah. So I started exploring my natural network, my friends, parents of friends, just, talking around. And one of my best friends, his dad was he's been working for Ford his whole life, and he was kind of poaching all of our friends and saying, oh, right when you graduate college, like, let's find a place for you at Ford. We'd love to have you, just shoot me your resume. I'll proofread it and everything. So he was a great tool. And yeah, I threw in my resume at Ford Motor. It was also close to home, right? Because out of college, no one has the money to quite live on their own. So moved back in with you guys, and yeah, the resume went through, and I had interviews and everything aligned pre-graduation date, which was awesome, because I didn't have that gap of, being flustered and, oh my gosh, I got to find a job. I graduated. Having that gap can be really stressful. So got that in early on, and I actually entered a rotational program at Ford called the Career Foundation Program, which is specifically built for business and finance students that are pursuing a career at Ford. So,
cool.
So that's the rotation I'm in currently.
I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in a moment. But what I think is interesting about this whole route is, in case folks can't tell, you're a pretty social bug. And not
Funny.
all of your in a good way, not all of your peers are. And so that networking that you did with your best friend's father and others, maybe shockingly didn't involve me or your father in any way. Like you really networked on your own. And I know not everybody, your age is comfortable doing that or can do that. A lot of folks network through their parents' circles. But in your case, it was more than successful and you were not shy about
Yeah.
approaching adults and making those contacts and doing it on your own. So
Yeah, I think that's really like it was kind of a growth thing for me at college. I I wasn't like close with my friends' parents like that. But I soon came to realize that they love talking about opportunities. They love talking about, potentially helping you find a career or helping you grow. And when I brought it up to, I spoke with, multiple friends and their parents, and they were just ecstatic to talk to me about that. And so I think, moving forward, I have, a younger stepbrother that's graduating college here in a minute, and just encouraging him and my younger peers that are in that phase of their life to really just like make that first step and reach out, because they want to talk to you. They want to find out, where your head's going and where you want to be. And, if you're close with their children, they're going to help you get there. And I think that that's a really important tool to tap into that is oftentimes overlooked.
yeah, for sure. And I know I've talked to you about maybe then having a follow-up conversation with the parent that is kind of shepherding all these kids into his work environment. And I think that would be a really cool episode for the future. And it sounds like he's probably a gamer for doing something
Yeah.
like that.
Oh yeah, he'd love to. He loves talking about his job. He loves Ford with his whole heart.
Yeah.
I make a joke that he loves it more than his family, but no, he's a dedicated guy. He loves what he does, and he'll take any opportunity really to try and bring in a younger crowd, bring in new ideas. He's always looking for, younger college people and stuff. So I think he would be a hoot on this show. He's a really, really social guy, really, just ecstatic to talk to people. So yeah.
Hey, so note for generations that are not Gen Z that are looking for this, like these younger generations appreciate that and are open to it. And it might be one of the best ways that our generations can actually bring in good young talent. So
Absolutely.
Eli, I want to ask you, because I know there's a big contrast between you joining a big company and your brother, who's been on, joining a small company. And in fact, when I talked to your brother in an earlier episode, he was comparing offers, and like, what's this and what's that. And I think you kind of once and done it and
Yeah.
found something, but
One shot at it. Yeah.
but like, so what, when you're thinking about that, what were you thinking about joining a big company versus what you just seen your brother do and join something that was smaller?
Yeah. So I think for me, my biggest concern, being one of Julie Fernandez's children, was really playing it conservative and getting, really, just security was the main thing, right? And right out of college, that's the best thing you can ask for. You haven't proven yourself yet as an asset to any company. You're relatively more disposable than the veterans who have been at companies for 10, 15, 20 years. So for me, the main thing that I was looking for was, where's a company where I can, have a secure job, and where the benefits are solidified, and there's, comprehensive programs around everything, your bonuses, like the structure is there, the infrastructure is there for you to have a successful career. And although it may not be as lucrative as some other smaller companies that maybe entice you with higher base pay or stock options or things like that, I was really just looking for, right out of college, let's get a good job at, a larger company. I'll get to learn a lot of things. I'll be able to expand my network, unlike any, job at a smaller company would be able to do. And although it's not as personal, I do think that I meet, like so many people every single week. I'm meeting new people. I'm connecting with new people. And yeah, I think that the security aspect of it and just understanding that I would have an amazing company to throw onto my resume for future employers was also appealing. So I think that was probably my approach looking at Ford.
Awesome. You probably listened to me more than your brother did, I suppose.
Maybe. We each go our own routes.
That's right. You're each your own individuals. Hey, so talk to me a little bit about working from home. I happen to know that's how, you started out. And then we'll morph into the conversation around what changed and, how you're working now. How was the climate when you first joined and what was going on?
Yeah. So my first 6 months of the rotation, pretty much everyone was working from home. I tried to really encourage myself to go into the office, and that was very difficult because none of my peers were at the office. None of my supervisors were at the office. Everyone was at home. And that happened for probably the first 6 months, which really, I think, stunted my learning curve. But then I want to say late 2023, maybe very beginning of 24, Ford had announced that they want people to be in the office at least 3 days a week. So that really helped, started coming in, meeting all the people that I've been seeing on WebEx calls and Teams chats and everything. And I could really start to see my learning pick up. So I think that, working from home, although I still do it now, the occasional like Mondays and Fridays, I'll typically do from home because that's what most people do. I really do believe in the value of being in person and, interacting with your coworkers. I think it increases productivity like infinitely. And I really started to see that with my deliverables and everything, like being able to walk up to my supervisor and ask their opinion right away instead of, waiting maybe an hour or so, just communicating through chat or Outlook or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think I love where we're at now, where I can interact with my coworkers and my supervisors almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. So very interesting. Everybody, like you said, everybody's style is different. And you and your brother did the earliest of our Gen Z podcasts. It's on the stack for anyone looking for it, where you use Chat GPT to interview about your first jobs. And there was a stark difference, and you were still in those doom and gloom days at the time. So it's actually pretty funny to listen to in hindsight, if anyone is interested in kind of hearing the point of view at that very moment on going into an office where there's nobody there, nobody to talk to.
It was ghost town. Like seriously. I mean, I would go in and it's like an open desk concept. So we would have this floor that we could sit wherever. And I think there was maybe like 10 people on the whole floor, none of which were on my team. It was all, other people. And so I was just sitting there alone in an office, like doing the same thing, doing the WebEx stuff, except I had to drive 45 minutes into work. So I was like, screw this. I'm not going to do this anymore. So then I did eventually just start working from home more often. But yeah, now I love going into the office.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that everybody will be different, but that's certainly one take, right, on the impact that has on someone starting their career.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, let's get back to the whole idea of the intern program, because I think I understand that that's really the vehicle that Ford uses, and it has rotations and some other stuff, right? And that's how they basically bring in new hires that are just graduating and starting their career, right?
Yep, exactly. So Ford's CFP program, the one that I'm in, is specifically designed to take college graduates and really get them a well-rounded understanding of how Ford works, in all facets of the company. So there are three main, I guess, rotations they want you to hit. One is in like corporate finance and forecasting. One is in product development. And then the last one is in like a controller's office for a plant. So you get to pretty much, have product development, plant, finance and forecast, and you get really a good array of all the different aspects of, from start to finish, what that looks like. And the purpose of that, it's a 3-year rotation. You do 1 year at each. And the purpose of that is right out of college, you don't have any experience, right? I'm not going to lie and say that I knew what I was doing in those first, 6 months to a year of my job. And I would have been, totally screwed if, if they, asked me to like, hey, can you forecast this thing? And I'd be like, I don't even know how to start. Like, where do I even begin? But now having, a whole rotation under my belt, moving on to my second, I'm going to be far more successful at this next rotation than my last, and my next than this one. And then ultimately at the end of that rotation, you're very knowledgeable on all the systems, you understand all the processes, and you're, infinitely more desirable than someone that just popped out of college, right? You spend 3 years with them and you've become an asset. And I think that that's a really great take on hiring. Getting your employees prepared and building a program that really focuses in on, let's teach these people our systems and our processes, and then let them loose into our company to really initiate change. So I like the way that it's structured. I wouldn't leave it for anything right now. Someone could come in with a juicy offer. I'm finishing this thing till the end. And I'm really looking forward to this rotation in my next.
Welcome to the Hire Her podcast, where women in talent call all the shots. We know, another recruiting podcast, just what the industry needs. Okay, but hear us out. You ever spend hours sourcing that perfect candidate, but they end up ghosting you harder than your hinge date? Or finally, you get that hiring manager feedback, only for them to, of course, say, can we see more candidates? Lame, right? But let's talk about what's really lame in the industry. How is it that 65% of recruiters are brilliant women, yet most of the decision makers look like a convention for middle-aged dudes named Brad?
That's where we come in. Hire Her isn't just another podcast about hiring trends you already heard like 50 times this week. We're here to elevate women in talent, share their career journeys, and make sure they take the lead. Because let's face it, if recruiting is the backbone of every company, why are we still fighting for a seat at the table? So whether you're a recruiter, a talent leader, or just someone trying to swim through the sausage fest of TA leadership, we got you, girl. Welcome to Hire Her, the recruiting podcast where women's voices aren't just heard, but they're leading the conversation.
So subscribe now, because middle management Brad sure as hell isn't going to do it for you.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Eli, because didn't you at one point in time actually, through your connections and the people that you were talking to and learning how to meet and interact with folks in different departments and in different roles, actually have an opportunity to consider jumping out of the program and, prematurely getting into the I'm actually hired into a permanent job. Like,
that opportunity. Yeah, that opportunity came probably third quarter, late last year. Talking in quarters like a finance person. Probably came in late last year. And I had the opportunity to pretty much jump ship on the rotation and to move down to one of the new battery plants, because they're, working on hiring and everything. And it was a really, really cool opportunity. I would have had to leave state, and there were a lot of things to consider, but ultimately I spoke very openly with my supervisors, my bosses, and, came to the conclusion that it's more important for me to finish this rotation. I'm very, start to finish kind of guy. And so I was really battling with this, and I was speaking with them, and they said, yeah, Eli, I think the right move for you is to see this thing through to the end, learn whatever you can, get the most that you can out of it, and then you can go wherever you want, right?
Yeah. And I think maybe what's interesting is now you're just starting your second rotation, and it actually has a link to that, EV, electric vehicle program in some way. So it's a different role, but you'll get some exposure in the intern program, right? To some point.
Yeah, my first rotation was in commercial software services for Ford. And that was super neat. That was the finance forecasting, it was kind of more corporate, big picture work, which was really tough as a first rotation. I think if you start with the micro and then grow into the macro, it makes more sense. I started right there and I was like, what are we selling here? They're subscriptions. Like, what are we depreciating? It's a subscription. A lot of it just wasn't clicking. You can't see a vehicle roll off the lot and you're like, okay, there's a $15,000 investment that we're going to make X amount off of. It's like you're working with all these kind of obscure cloud and data costs and everything. So it was really tough. But as I started to learn and really understand what I was doing, now my next rotation is in product development for software for Ford model vehicles. So I kind of have like a little bit of understanding on what they're trying to achieve, what, the different cost pillars for the products that we're developing are. And I think it really helped me fundamentally grasp the work that I'm doing in this next rotation. So they're designing it super well. They know where I was. They know where I'm going. There's a whole committee that orchestrates there are like 200 and change of us just kind of moving around these positions. And they're doing a really good job making sure that it's all cohesive and kind of flows together.
Yeah, awesome. I'm just curious, among your friends group, right, and others your age, do a lot of folks have opportunities like this that are that structured? Are you finding, I'll say kids, I'm sorry, everybody, like young adults, like you guys, are you finding you guys, ending up in a role and it's just like, I'm in a role and now you either like it or you don't. And if you don't, what the heck do? I have to go somewhere else. I mean, what are you seeing from among your friends group of people?
Yeah, for the most part, I see people getting into like just full-time jobs right off the bat. Some of them, honestly, because they're entry-level positions, are like, they're on hourly rates. They're getting overtime, things like that. And it's just a little bit of a different structure. But a lot of my friends also work at Ford because we had that same, poaching dad who was just like, how can I apply your skills to Ford Motor Company? And he was like grabbing all of us. So a few of my friends ended up in similar rotations like I am. There are engineering rotations, things like that. But yeah, for the most part, I see my friends trickling into full-time like career jobs and stuff. And honestly, we're still early on in our careers. We've only been graduated for, coming up on 2 years. So I haven't had a lot of, oh, I hate my job, blah, blah, blah. That, like, you're in the honeymoon phase with your job still. You haven't had time to really grow, to dislike it so much to leave. But, I do, hear little things here and there about what they like, what they don't like. And it's interesting to see them kind of work through those things because I know at the end of the day, they're going to have a decision to make that I don't necessarily have to make because I'm essentially a contracted employee. And at the end of my term, it's either a job offer or not. And if not, then I'll find something else. But I guess I have a little bit of security through that. So I feel like it would be a different conversation, 2 years from now, when they start kind of churning off to other jobs.
Yeah. Well, as an HR person, you said something just a few minutes back that I think would make a lot of HR people's, eyes light up. And that is, I'm in it. I had this point where I could decide whether I bail or not. And, I'm in it for the experience. And that's going to keep me there at least through, I think it's a 3-year rotation, right? But the first rotation wasn't exactly a year. So is it 3? Is it 5? But there's one way to hang on to somebody, a young worker who then still has something to look forward to after that.
Yeah. I mean, you're pulling, these kids, I'm going to call them kids too. You know what? I graduated, I did my tenure. They're kids, these kids coming out of college and for the past 4 years, typically 4 years, they're in learning mode and they're all about learning and growing their education and their understanding of their area of study. And if you come up and offer them, here's an opportunity to continue learning when you're already in that mindset, to continue learning and also make, a salary doing so. I think that these college students would jump at that opportunity because they're, maybe feeling a little bit not so confident in themselves and their ability to apply what they've learned on textbook in the workforce.
Yeah.
And it's really scary. I was there too. Like I was terrified for my first day at work, because I'm like, I learned the textbook, definitions of everything but I haven't been able to apply it anywhere. I haven't been able to apply my, my Excel classes, my forecasting classes. Like now is the big leagues. I got to figure it out. And I think having that incremental structure of like, we're going to walk you through this. We're going to make sure that there are safeguards in place to where you can't make, major errors. And it's like, it's impossible to biff it that hard. Like they're making sure they understand that we're, fresh out of college. They're not going to give us the key to the gate, right? Like we're getting tons of checks on our work, and it's really great to have that fostering kind of overview of your work. So I think that's definitely a great thing that I wish more companies did. And there are tons of companies that do. But seeing where my friends end up and stuff, I'm like, man, if only your company offered something like this, you'd be less stressed. You'd be, kind of more confident in your abilities and everything. So it's a really great thing what they're doing here.
Awesome. Well, so, without getting into anything like super personal to you or whatever, you've now been through performance review, right? Things like performance review and bonus and merit types of stuff. And I'm just conscious of the fact that in a big company like Ford, going kind of the conservative route, as you put it, is probably a very different experience than what Nico has been going through, your brother, in the prior episode. So what's been your experience with some of that? Is it, useful? Can anybody evaluate your performance? How does it go?
So I listened to Nico's episode, and it sounded like there were just a lot of changes going around, right? Like they were switching health insurance coverage. They were doing all these different, maybe we're not doing a match this year because we're, undergoing some other stuff and whatever. I have found that I'm very, very content with my benefits package. I think it's both competitive, but also conservative. And I just know that, when re-election time comes around and I've got to, select my stuff, like it's all the same thing. There's nothing new. There's nothing really huge happening. If anything really big is happening, they make sure, they're sending you emails. They're like, here's this new, here's this new health insurance provider we're going with or something. That's never happened. They're always the same exact benefits every single year, and you can just reallocate your dollars however you want to. If you want to contribute more to retirement, so be it. Like there's nothing changing. And for me, that brings me a lot of peace of mind, just knowing that the benefits that I have this year are going to be the same that I'm going to have, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And there's not going to be anything super crazy happening where they're going to drop off their contributions or they're going to do anything like that. So, I think that's probably.
So for you, that's a plus, right? You didn't have to worry about big swings one way or another with the choices that you made.
Yeah. That, and, we use Alight, and I love how interactive it is, how, you can really break down like everything. And I love the how easy it is to use and to navigate and everything. It's very user friendly. And so I've really enjoyed having that visibility into my benefits and really being able to look into it, not have to reach out to an HR person and be like, what the heck's going on? How do I access my stuff? It's all there. It's all ready to use. This is not a sponsorship. I like, I like what the system that we've chosen is really, really nice.
I didn't know you even knew who did your benefits. So you just shocked me. Most people don't. And so I have in some way you have an ounce of HR nerd in you, maybe. I'm thinking.
Some of it shedded off from just from being raised by you, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. Hey, we don't know what dangerous impacts we might impart to our kids, right?
Whether voluntary or involuntary.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, there's something that I want to, whenever we're talking shop, you've had some pretty candid observations about working with boomers and Gen X's. And of course, boomers and Gen X's, are not shy about making some generalizations about working with Gen Z's, right? That's part of why this whole series is kind of interesting to folks. And sometimes those stories start with, homie doesn't know how to, and then there's some technology, blah, 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 after that, right? And it just makes me bust a gut every time I listen to you, talking about your experience working with older workforce generations. So, like, I don't know, share something
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
This is, consider this the call to war on on Gen Xers, trashing my generation here. There is definitely a major technology gap that I am seeing with my coworkers, with adjacent team members and everything, where, like they understand really, really well, big picture, what they're doing, the deliverables that they need to send and everything. When it comes down to the practice of how to do it, that's where I think that it gets quite antiquated, and they're using, I think I was telling you in the car that, they'll like use they'll try so hard to avoid any keyboard shortcuts, and it bothers me because we work in Excel all day. I'm staring at Excel sheets for 10, 11 hours a day. It's all I do. And so, naturally you got to learn the shortcuts to make your work easier. And every single time I hop on a call with an older, man or woman who's, ripping through an Excel sheet, and it's just click and click and click and click. I'm like, please, I've got like 6 more meetings to get to. Can we just get through this? Control C, Control V. That's like fundamental. You should know that. And it's been frustrating working with them. I found that actually in opening up about it though, I have been able to almost become like somewhat of a teacher, like they'll be open to feedback. If I see they're doing something, I'm like, hey, by the way, did you know there was this like cool way to do that quicker? And then they're like, oh my God, yeah, I'll write that down and I'll use that moving forward and stuff, whether it's a new formula that maybe works better or something like that. And that's only some of the time.
Well, whether they actually,
the
they probably write it down to humor you. Now, do they actually use it the next time around? I don't know.
I am not sure, but they do write it down on pen and paper, which is already a red flag. I already know that is like number one tell that you may not be implementing this technological, change to your process as you're writing it down with a number 2 pencil on a piece of paper. But no, it's been difficult at times. A lot of them are really stuck in their ways and they're like, well, this is the way that I've been doing it for, 10 years. So I'm going to keep doing it that way. It's the way I know. And, it kind of bothers me that they're not, maybe more open-minded, because I'm always trying to be, and I know I'm not all the time, but I'm always trying to be more open-minded about their processes. And maybe they're doing things more by the book that, here how the desk procedures have it laid out. They're really sticking to it. Right. And I know that that's somewhere where I could grow, personally and professionally. And so there's a really cool dynamic that goes back and forth, but it's really reliant on the recipient hearing and listening and being open to that feedback. And I feel like I'm maybe getting that half the time. So yeah, I think that there's a huge, there's a lot you can learn from other generations. And I think that just because you have the experience and you have the years on us, you can still learn a thing or two from my generation. We're not completely useless. Okay. We're trying to get there to really be, valuable. But in the meantime, we've got a couple tricks up our sleeve that could make your job easier.
Yeah. Well, and let's see if this holds true, because so far, my gut tells me that it's going to be a lot easier to, kind of perpetuate this Gen Z series and have kids. We'll just keep using the term kids that are young adults that are interested and open to coming on and doing a quick podcast. And that isn't the same. That's not the same receptiveness that I get from folks in my own generation. Right. So we'll see
Yeah.
how quickly we can pile up a few of these and just keep some of the series going.
Yeah. I think we feel, suppressed and maybe, a bit like, held under the water at times, and any opportunity we get to be like, I know something, we're going to jump at it because we do know a thing, at least one, and we're going to share that with the world. And, I think, talking to my friends and stuff, like an opportunity like this would be really, really neat. And they're super excited about it. But yeah, I think that's the general consensus from at least my inner circle.
There you go. All right. Well, you're starting to represent March for your generation.
I'm trying, yeah.
Hey, so let's start. I got two more things just to wrap us up. The first thing I was going to ask is just tell folks what's next for you. Like, what are you looking forward to in the work-wise, in the workplace here?
Yeah. So like I said before, I love the company that I work at. I think Ford's a great company to work at. I have kind of gotten frustrated over the past almost 2 years of working there with just how, I guess, like politicized and how, formal and how everything is, right? Everything's a structure. Everything's a procedure. You got to follow this. You got to follow that. You got to get approvals. So what I've found is something that may traditionally only need to take a week, 10 days, ends up taking, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months. And that for me is really, really frustrating. And I see things going through approval chains, and I'm pinging people almost every day. I'm like, please approve this. We need this. Please approve it. We need it. And it just takes so long.
Yeah.
And there's no way around it because, the systems are set up to where you have to get X and Y approval. And that's just how it is. Yeah. So I think, and it all depends, right? Anything can change, but I would like to, at some point in my career, try a smaller company like Nico's pursuing and just seeing what that environment's like, where you can enact more change on your own.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe with the supervision of like 1 or 2 people and not have approval chains of 30, 40 people that need to send something through and really be able to make differences a lot quicker and, maybe initiate new processes. Like if I want to start a new process now, it's quite difficult. Like you got to really write it out. It's got to be approved. You got, internal controls comes in and they're like, what's going on? You're changing something. And it's just kind of a pain. And so like I see areas where maybe some things could be improved. And I just wish that I could just start it, right? Just go for it and show my boss, like, here's what we're going to do. And I think it's going to be great. And if you hate it, you can shut it down and we'll go back to the drawing board.
Right.
Like finding that out next day instead of 4 months from now, and then be like, okay, back to the drawing board. So yeah, I think that's probably at some point going to be in my career. Whether that's in the near term or the far term, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on what happens with Ford. I'm really content and satisfied with my job there. So I'm not going to be so quick as to say at the end of my 3 years, I'm out of here.
No.
I don't have a dislike for them.
Actually, as your mentor brings in a whole host of young Gen Zs all over the place everywhere, there's also the possibility that that's the influence that your generation has, is to help figure out like, it's been like this, and there's, it's kind of the difference, one of the key differences between large and small companies. And does it have to be like that? Or, is it through new softwares and different workflows and more, you were telling me about just reclassing workers and categorizing them, could be just, like an endless tailspin of, I think I got it done. Oh no, it went back to where it was before. How did that happen?
Part of that is because we are using the ancient PeopleSoft. For those of you who don't know, that's essentially like reading Latin. It's a dead language. It's very, you'd see it in an antique store, but it's really, tough because I feel, and maybe this is my own bias, that like having some understanding of the work that the finance team is doing is very important for our human resources counterparts. And I've found that, the more I talk to them and they're genuinely interested, the more I talk to them about what we're trying to achieve, it helps them so much with their job and with enacting the changes that we're trying to implement. So really just opening up the board, to speak to your counterparts that are in other divisions of the company, is super crucial. And I found, a lot of my team members and even myself getting locked into this box where we're like, I'm going to talk to the finance people. I'm going to talk to the finance people, and like not opening up to marketing or HR or, operations or anything like that. So we're getting there. We are trying to enact some change in our department mappings and everything. And it's a slow walk, but the more that we work with them and the more that we talk with them, they're really starting to put the pieces together and be like, okay, I understand what you guys are trying to achieve here. Let's get there.
Yeah. So Gen Zers everywhere, like, be bold and open up those conversations, because maybe some of us are, a little stuck in our ways and don't do it as freely and as openly as we should be, to make sure that we're blending the lines of communication.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Eli. Well, thanks so much for jumping on the call. If Pete were here today, he would say, man, you're in finance. I think you should try payroll, because it is the coolest place to be. So that's for another day.
It's for another day. You're going to bring me over to the dark side now.
Yeah, we might bring you over to the dark side. So I have to fit that in on Pete's behalf. Otherwise, we usually wrap up with like, so how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you? How can they reach you? And I hate to say it, I was looking in LinkedIn and I'm like, my kid doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. Do you have one? Yeah.
Of course, I've got the most legit LinkedIn profile you've ever seen.
Really?
I worked hard to get to that 500 plus connections that everyone's searches for. But yeah, Elias Fernandez on LinkedIn. You didn't find it?
I didn't find it. So
maybe I have you blocked.
Because we'll put it in the show notes in case anybody wants to reach out and give Eli a shout, or in case you're in his friends network or not in his friends network and you really want to kind of help shed some light on your own Gen Z experience. I'm on a mission now to bring more than my own 2 sons forward. All right. So you do have a LinkedIn. We're going to find it and I'm going to stick it in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experience and maybe helping me kick off and start a whole host of others, including your mentor, who's the biggest Ford recruiter ever without being an HR.
Oh my gosh.
guy.
Yeah. Give this man some bonus pay for real. He's bringing in some young talent. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast talking with you about all this. So thank you.
All right. Take care.